thank you for being here. We're going to go right ahead and start. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to welcome you all to the National Open Dialogue on Energy Transition in Nigeria. A special welcome to our online participants as well. Basically, this dialogue seeks to raise awareness among young people and marginalized groups about the energy transition plan in Nigeria. I hope that this event would encourage meaningful engagement today, and basically, most importantly, I think what we hope for at the end of this dialogue is that we identify action points and next steps that would help amplify young voices. I would like to also recognize some of our dignitaries here today. First up, we have the Deputy German Ambassador to Nigeria, Johannes Lehner. Welcome. We also have here the Cluster Coordinator of the Just Transition and Inclusion Cluster at GIZ, Duke Benjamin. Also here present is Gina Lagunes, who is the head of the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office. I would also like to thank our supporters of this event, the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office, the German Embassy, BudgIT, as well as the Open Dialogues International Foundation. A few housekeeping rules before we start. So this is from the hotel, and they are saying, welcome to this event. The hotel management wishes to advise all participants to take the following security precautions to curb the nefarious acts of some syndicates that mingle into important functions like pretending to be participants. Take good care of your valuables, especially your bags, laptops, GSM handsets. They are some of the items targeted by criminals, especially during tea break, lunch, and dinner. In this case, this wouldn't apply. We wish you all successful deliberations. So once again, thank you for coming to this event. I would like to say for the restroom, if you just step right out of this door to your right and go straight down, you would see the sign right in front of you. So we'll just, I would like to ask you to rise up now for the national anthem.
Good morning, everybody, especially Duke Benjamin, Just Transition and Inclusion Cluster Coordinator at GIZ, Gina Lagunes, Head of the Nigerian German Hydrogen Office, Jennifer Uchendu, Founder and Director of SustyVibes, ladies and gentlemen, fellow advocates for a sustainable future. It's an honor for me to welcome you all to this National Open Dialogue on Energy Transition. First and foremost, allow me to extend my heartfelt gratitude to SustyVibes for organizing this pivotal event and to the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office for their support in making it possible. I also would like to acknowledge SustyVibes partners, Open Dialogues International Foundation, BudgIT, Natural Resources Governance Institute, and the Nigeria Energy Transition Office. Our presence here today symbolizes a powerful alliance between Germany and Nigeria to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time. the transition to clean, sustainable energy sources. Germany is proud to be part of this global effort towards energy transition and is committed to working with Nigeria and other nations to create an energy landscape that is sustainable, inclusive and environmentally responsible. Our commitment to this endeavor is further underscored by our financial support through programs as the Nigerian Energy Support Program, co-financed with the European Union, and the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office, part of the Global Hydrogen Diplomacy Program, financed by the German Federal Foreign Office. Both programs are implemented here in Nigeria by the GIZ, amongst several other projects working together for a sustainable future together with the GIZ. SustyVibes is a remarkable non-profit organization composed of passionate youth groups dedicated to environmental and climate action. It is therefore a testament to the determination and innovation of Nigeria's young people who are driving positive change for their country and indeed the whole world. The work they are doing, for example, through the Bioverse NG project with the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany to Nigeria is proudly funding, proves their dedication to protecting nature and fostering climate action. The Bioverse NG project aims to raise awareness of the nexus between climate change and biodiversity among young Nigerians and to initiate an inclusive dialogue on environmental policy issues. As part of this project, almost 1,000 young Nigerians are being trained in a 6-week workshop on biodiversity from policy to practice. This will be followed by 6 regional dialogues that will allow workshop participants to engage with stakeholders in the climate and biodiversity sector in Nigeria. Furthermore, 3 project participants will be offered internship positions at SustyVibes and other biodiversity-focused organizations across Nigeria. This will provide invaluable hands-on experience and enable these young individuals to make a real impact in the field. Finally, the National Biodiverse NG Conference, which will bring together stakeholders to discuss climate change and biodiversity in Nigeria, is another vital step towards fostering collaboration and sharing innovative solutions. Initiatives like Bioverse NG project and this open national dialogue on energy transition are showing us that the young people of Nigeria who are prominently represented here are not just the future but also the driving force for change. It is your energy, your innovation and your vision that will propel Nigeria towards a greener future. Your ideas and opinions are invaluable and we are eager to hear them. Furthermore, we must not forget that marginalized and vulnerable communities are often unheard. We must ensure that our transition plans are inclusive and take into account the needs of all sectors of society. The National Open Dialogue on Energy Transition in Nigeria is a platform of immense importance. It represents a great opportunity to bring together a wide spectrum of voices and perspectives, including those of young people and marginalized groups, to discuss Nigeria's energy transition plan. This is a plan that can significantly alter the course of our young nation's energy landscape, a plan that has far-reaching implications for the environment, the economy, and the well-being of our Nigerians. Let us make the most out of this extraordinary platform and initiate a dialogue that sparks real change. Let us harness the energy and the enthusiasm of young people in this room and formulate strategies and actions that will enable Nigeria to become a beacon of sustainable energy in Africa and the rest of the world. Thank you for your attention, and I eagerly anticipate the fruitful discussions that lie ahead. Together we can make a difference, and I wish the best of success to this workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that welcome address. I think that last line really stuck with me. Together we can make a difference. Going on to the next item on the agenda. First off, you're probably wondering who this stranger is talking to you. So my name is Edekeno Usoko Gubane, and over here with me is Joshua Abdullahi, who is the sign language interpreter. Before we go to the next item, I would like to introduce the keynote speaker. So I'll just read out his bio before I call him on here. So the keynote speaker is Duke Benjamin. Duke Benjamin is the coordinator of the Just Transition and Inclusion Cluster. He also doubles as the head of program for the Nigerian Energy Support Program. The Just Transition and Inclusion Cluster consists of 8 programs, including the Nigerian Energy Support Program and the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office. The cluster addresses topics that span across energy, climate, as well as peace and security. NESP advises key stakeholders in the Nigerian electricity industry on reliable and sustainable electricity supply. It is a technical assistance program which is co-funded by the European Union and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and it is implemented by GIZ in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Power. Before joining GIZ, Duke supported German companies to establish and expand their economic relations with Nigeria as the deputy delegate of the delegation of German industry and commerce in Nigeria. Prior to AHK Nigeria, Duke worked with the German utility in sales and product development, product management, and finally as head of energy services. I would now like to welcome Duke to present his keynote address.
Thank you, Soko, for that very long introduction. The Deputy Ambassador Johannes Lehner of the Republic of Germany to Nigeria, and my dear colleague Gina Lagunes, heading the Hydrogen Office, other colleagues behind here, friends of SustyVibes, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased to be here today at this National Open Dialogue on Energy Transition in Nigeria, especially also happy because it is youth-led and youth-focused. Representing GIZ, the German Development Corporation, GIZ for short, and we at GIZ are working worldwide to shape a future worth of living. We are in above 120 countries, and we are supporting the governments of the countries we are in to improve a future worth living in their respective countries. Nigeria has a large population predominantly made up of youth. While this could be an advantage, it also presents the need for increased coordination and planning to ensure a sustainable development. Nigeria remains highly dependent on fossil fuels and still deals with electricity shortage. Currently, renewable energy and energy efficiency are still very much underutilized in the country. However, policy development has been encouraging with the introduction of various policies and plans such as the Energy Transition Plan. I mean, many Nigerians usually say we don't lack policies, but rather the implementation is a challenge. I'm sure there has been quite a number of policies around the corner, but I think in the last few years there is a bulk and at least an attempt to push out more policies and also the struggle to make sure they are implemented. In 2022, as you all know, the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan was launched to chart the pathway for Nigerians' ambitious plan of achieving net zero in 2060. I mean, the plan identifies potential pathways to not only achieve this net zero within the next till 2060, but it also focuses on reducing emissions across the cooking, oil and gas, industry, transport, and power sectors. It seeks, amongst other things, to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty and to drive economic growth, manage the expected long-term job loss in the sector for oil and gas, and promote a fair, inclusive, and equitable energy transition. Achieving these goals requires as many people to come on board as possible. The role of youth in contributing to energy transition can therefore not be underestimated, as it ensures inclusivity, sustainability, innovation, and integration of new ideas that will accelerate Nigeria's net zero target. But of course, it is also the youth that will hopefully in the decades to come be more affected by all the climate things that we are seeing. So it's the youth that are expected to live younger than the older generations. So of course, the involvement of the youth is very necessary. Our work at GIZ runs around inclusivity, so it is critical to our work. So for this reason, beneficiaries from our interventions include young people, women, vulnerable persons, and residents of rural communities. It should therefore not come as a surprise that GIZ, through the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office, is supporting this event today. Our commitment to a just transition is evident through programs such as the Nigeria Energy Support Program that has been mentioned, co-financed by the European Union and the German government, and of course also the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office that is financed by the German Federal Foreign Office. Both programs are implemented by us, GIZ, and most times in very close collaboration with the ministries in Nigeria, and these projects are all working towards a sustainable future within the just transition and inclusion cluster, which have already been mentioned by my colleague. Now, SustyVibes itself is doing an amazing job working in mobilizing young people to take up space within the sector. Initiatives like this dialogue today show the commitment of young people to drive positive change towards climate action. So your presence, both those that are physically here and those that are joining us online, is a testament, at least to us, to your willingness to actively participate in transitioning to a greener environment. To achieve a smooth energy transition, a good understanding and awareness on the energy transition goals are required. So this platform therefore serves as an avenue to raise awareness on the challenges within the identified sectors and the objectives of the plan towards curbing these challenges. So it is my hope that you all today keep an open mind to identify ways you can make an impact for Nigeria and for the world. Getting involved in advocacy is a good start. As major users of social media, young people can leverage the medium of social media to raise awareness on measures to take to achieve an energy transition. Through our hydrogen office and the programs such as Nigerian Energy Support Program, we have conducted several sensitization workshops to raise awareness on energy topics relating to hydrogen, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. So projects being supported by the German government, such as the Bioverse NG, which is supported by the German Foreign Office, the German Embassy, also help in getting young people involved in advocacy. So I encourage you today to explore innovative and relatable ways you can amplify your voices and engage in this decision making for climate action for Nigeria. Another way young people can get involved early is to include climate and renewable energy topics into the curriculum at universities. And that is something that the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office is now supporting the National University Commission to explore ways in which such topics can be embedded into the curricula, especially on renewable energy at the university level. Now, there are probably young people here and also online with innovative ideas who may have graduated and would like to start careers within the sector, but feel they are not equipped with enough skills and knowledge in navigating the sector. So do not be discouraged. There are various trainings already available, and there are trainings not only by the German Nigerian Hydrogen Office, but also by the Nigerian Energy Support Program that has supported the development of a curriculum for trainings on various renewable energy and energy efficiency topics. And they are now delivered by about 20 institutions in Nigeria, all domesticated with the Council for Registration and Engineering in Nigeria. So whether you're an engineer, a legal expert, finance expert, policy expert, project manager, or communications expert, or you're still figuring it out, there's a place for you within the energy or climate sector. I urge you to broaden your mind to endless possibilities as you listen and participate in this session here today. Whether you choose to be an advocate, further your studies in a niche course, leverage your existing skills, or your contribution will definitely matter to this common goal for us all. So thank you. I wish you all a fruitful exchange, and I hope that at the end of this dialogue, most of us that are here, some of you can identify innovative ways of contributing to Nigeria's energy transition and climate targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Duke, for that keynote address. I think I'll just reiterate what Duke said about keeping an open mind. We're just starting this event, and we have quite a lot planned with the panel discussions and the breakout sessions. So just please keep an open mind, and I'm sure you get a lot from this event. So at this point, we'll do a quick mood check. And I hope everyone online can hear me, because I think I just saw a message saying they couldn't hear. So please kindly ensure that they can. And please help me type this in as well while I read it on the chat. So basically, I'd like to urge you guys to bring out your phones and go to menti.com. We're going to do a quick mood check to see how you're feeling and what your ideas are relating to the energy transition plan. So just go to www.menti.com and then type in the code. Let me give you some seconds to get there first. Is everyone there yet? Is there anyone who isn't there? Okay. So I'll just urge you to type in the code 83993183. I'll read that again, 83993183. And the question there, which we would like you to answer, is: the year is 2060. Nigeria's energy transition plan has been actualized. What do you see around you? Remember, again, we say keep an open mind. The possibilities are endless. Okay, the code is 83993183. I think I can also ask people in the room to, is there anyone that is willing to maybe tell us the future they imagine? Anyone? No one? Okay, please. I can come to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I've written down 3 things, so I'll just read from my phone. So the first thing I've written down is increase energy access to at least 80%, more green jobs, and then a clean industrialization.
Thank you. Those are good ones. Anyone else? No? Okay, great. Could you just pass the mic to you. Thank you.
What I've written is also similar to what someone has said. I put it as green economy, energy efficiency, and the sustainable jobs by 2060. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Any takers? Okay, there's one person over there.
Just to add to what you have said, we'll be moving from the conventional fossil fuels to alternative renewable energy sources like wind and solar.
Okay, so I like that about the alternative fuels, and I think the panel discussion will also address issues relating to that. So I'm super excited personally, and I hope that you are too, for all that we will learn throughout this. So I'll just go right ahead to the next item on the agenda, which would be the introduction of the energy plan, or the energy transition plan. Let me be specific. And taking that session would be Somkele Awakalu, who is a finance specialist in the Energy Transition Office in Nigeria. As a finance specialist, Somkele supports the provision of financial expertise, analysis, and planning within Nigeria's Energy Transition Office to inform the development and delivery of interventions and programs that can facilitate the flow of finance to unlock energy transition development. He also focuses on identifying finance needs for major operations related to Nigeria's energy transition. Currently, he is leading the JETP work stream to articulate the case for Nigeria to access the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Somkele brings a decade's worth of experience in strategy and finance, focused advisory in both the public and private sector in Nigeria. Somkele worked in the office of the Vice President from 2019 to 2023, most interestingly supporting the creation and implementation of the Economic Sustainability Plan, the Multidimensional Poverty Survey, and the Imagine Nigeria project. He holds a BSc in Economics and Politics from Loughborough University and an MSc in Business Finance and Economics from the University of Sheffield. I would now like to call on Somkele for this introduction.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So thank you very much for inviting the Energy Transition Office to speak a little bit about the energy transition plan. I'll try to keep it very brief and not be too detail heavy, and if you have any questions, then we can do that. So I'll just be giving an introduction, some of the progress that the Energy Transition Office has made, and then talk a little bit about financing and investment mobilization. So just a bit of a background. At COP26, the former president of Nigeria committed to carbon neutrality by 2060. That means net zero emissions by 2060. And he stressed the importance of Nigeria's energy transition in its economic development. And after that, the Energy Transition Plan was unveiled in 2022, and it basically details the pathway to decarbonization and the strategy. And since this announcement, the ETP has been fully approved by the Federal Executive Council. Long and short of this is, in order to get to net zero, there's significant low carbon developments that have to go across 5 key sectors. Duke had mentioned that already. So buildings, which is in terms of solarization of buildings, as well as clean cooking, in transportation, industry, oil and gas, and power. And so really, in terms of buildings, the emissions need to decrease by around 98%, and that's primarily driven by a shift to biogas and electric cooking. For transport, the emissions decrease will have to be by around 97%, and that's due to uptake of electric vehicles in passenger car segments. With the removal of the fuel subsidy, we're already seeing significant demand for two-wheelers, electric three-wheelers, and passenger vehicles. For industry, it's really around decreasing emissions due to the efforts to decarbonize in cement and ammonia production, and shifting 100% to zero-emission fuels for heating. For oil and gas, it's really around reduced flaring and improved electrification and energy efficiency. Okay, back here. And then power is increasing solar and starting to replace gas. So we know that gas is an important transition fuel, but as we go down the line towards 2060, we need to replace gas and eliminate diesel and petrol gensets. So a key, an important thing to note is that the energy transition is not going to be cheap. We're going to require at least $1.9 trillion in spending up to 2060, and that is including 410 billion above business as usual. So it's really important to understand that, and that 410 billion annualizes as 10 billion every year above business as usual. So it's really important to understand what the financing commitment is and where we can get that money from. So just to give a bit of a background, there was an energy transition implementation working group that was established to drive the implementation of the ETP, of which the Secretariat is the Energy Transition Office where I work. There were concrete objectives to build on this announcement I earlier made. I said around the president, the former president, securing at least 10 billion in financing commitment, 3 to 5 agreements with OEMs to begin local manufacturing and assembly, playing a leadership role in Africa, and streamlining existing and new government-related transition initiatives, so Decade of Gas, Solar Power Niger program, and the likes. So far, some of the objectives around driving advocacy, coordination, and policy alignment has led to the global launch of the Nigeria Energy Transition Plan, which is basically the basis by which we're charting the course to decarbonization for 2060. Again, the Energy Transition Plan is a live document. It's not sacrosanct, so there are changes that can be made with the right supporting data. So far, $3.6 billion has been raised. So I'll put a caveat there. Commitments, it's not been disbursed yet. And we have identified a pipeline of projects. So it's actually now about 45 billion. And it covers on-grid renewable energy, off-grid solutions, the Nigeria Gas Flare Commercialization Program, and other decentralized renewable energy programs. We've also supported the development of the Kigali Communique for a just and inclusive energy transition, and we're supporting policy interventions in clean cooking and in e-mobility across the country. We participate and we support roadshows and engagements because one of the important things, it's one thing to have an energy transition plan, but if you do not socialize it or give people a chance to critique it, then you have a real problem. So one of the main things we've been doing is roadshows and engagements such as this. So these are some of the areas where we see investment opportunity in generation, metering, gas flare, commercialization, clean cooking, e-mobility, healthcare, and technical assistance. So this is old now. So the key priorities for, well, 2023 is basically over, is the Just Energy Transition Partnership. So this is an innovative financing mechanism whereby developed countries provide developing countries with financing to support their energy transition. So far, about 4 countries have got these funds: South Africa, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Senegal. And Nigeria, because of the financing commitment that I mentioned earlier, Nigeria is positioning itself to benefit from the JETP or any other type of aggregate financing scheme that there is. In order for the energy transition plans to be implemented, we definitely need it to be private sector focused and not led by the government side, because there has to be financial viability of these projects. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to facilitate private sector participation. We also want to repurpose the subsidy savings towards government-led transition projects. And we also have some Africa-wide initiatives like the Africa Carbon Market Initiative and the Africa Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative. So the RME is actually one that's extremely important because it's trying to near shore. And so if you're doing an energy transition and you're relying on imports, the sustainability of that doesn't make sense. So in trying to move towards net zero, we need to ensure that some of the technologies are localized. I think 3 weeks ago I was in Lagos for the commissioning of a solar PV manufacturing plant that should churn out about 100 megawatts yearly by a company called Oxano Solar. So we're trying to facilitate a lot more of that. I won't bore you too much with the financing side of things, but thank you very much. Hope there are no questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask, do you have any questions? Okay. There's someone. Okay, there's one person here.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. My question is one, but it could be broad. It's on your item 3 that you say don't want to go us with the finance, and that's the area that I'm interested. Could you please highlight some of the financial strategies for the effective implementation of the UTP in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My first question is, you spoke about this being started by the last administration, and I was wondering what has been the feelers with, what has the feelers been with this current administration, seeing that they're a new government, and usually some governments throw away ideas of the last administration. Secondly, do you think, considering, can we balance this, our expectation with the removal of fuel subsidy? Because with the removal of fuel subsidy, most persons are going back to use of firewood. Most poor families, I know some of us, we are in Abuja, so we don't go to the villages. But those of us who go to the villages know that our families can no longer afford gas, and so they are going back to using firewood. So how do we balance our net zero target with the removal of fuel subsidy? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also have a question on the key priorities for 2023. I think the first point was just Energy Transition Partnership, JETP. I think I overheard some months back the endeavors there. I would just like to know where do we stand today. But generally, also the key priorities for 2023. There were 4 in number. The question would be, we're heading towards the end of 2023. Are there already some wins that you might share with us? Thank you.
Let him take these ones first.
Okay, thank you very much. I was not expecting this many questions, but we'll take it up. So in terms of the financing strategy, what I said I don't want to go into is a deal by deal. So those slides were really around specific deals and how we're trying to get to financial close in those deals. So it's not that it's not important, but it's a lot of detail that is not required. So in terms of our financing strategy, I think as I said before, we're prioritizing private sector participation. So these deals have to make sense to the private sector in order for us to catalyze that kind of funding. So the $23 billion investment opportunity that was earlier scoped at the launch of the energy transition plan, out of that, about $17 billion was attributed to the private sector. Because at the end of the day, in order for it to be sustainable and for there to be proliferation of renewable energy projects, there has to be leadership from the private sector. So in fact, we actually have a private sector working group, and there are a few private sector participants in that working group, all working to lead to financial close in some of these projects. So for instance, the gas flare commercialization project started in 2016, and we're seeing some traction now because of some of the work from the private sector working group. So those are some of our financing strategies. We're relying on partners like GIZ, Power Africa, and also in cahoots with the government to make sure that we achieve financial close. In terms of the question around participation from the new government, we have a good relationship with the Office of the Vice President. We're fine-tuning some of the details around structure and the energy transition implementation working group, but the leadership of the ETO has a good relationship with the Office of the Vice President, and in fact you can see that the Vice President was in China for the Belt and Road Initiative, which was supported by us. So in terms of, we don't have any problem with the new government. They're not going to throw it away. They may have a different way of doing things, but the fundamental is that we're going to try to implement the energy transition plan. In terms of removal of fuel subsidy, so we'll need to have data to support this opinion, because just as much as some people are going backwards towards firewood, there are also some people who are moving towards solar PVs. I know there are a lot of people in this period that have installed solar panels on their roofs. There are also some people, we work with some of the e-mobility companies, and we're seeing that some of their demand is ramping up. So it depends on what side of the coin that you're sitting on. But we are definitely keeping it in view in terms of the cost implication of the removal of fuel subsidy and how that impacts our strategy. So for JET-P, so the process is a very political process. It's not something that you can definitely say. So for instance, if you look at Senegal, they got 2.5 billion euros, but that was majorly a push from France because it's a gas economy. They're trying to go into gas, whereas the other recipients of JET-P are coal-based economies. So we're trying to understand the way that process works. We wanted to have a pipeline of projects before we apply for the JET-P, but the other beneficiaries didn't have a pipeline of projects. In fact, South Africa, that was the first country to be announced as a recipient, hasn't gotten one cent from that funding. So it's still something that we're keeping in view, because in order for us to meet our goals, we need a bulk type of support from the international partner group. So it's still a priority. There's still some moves that can be made, maybe not before COP28, but it depends on how things go. By COP28, there might be some movement and traction with that. You also asked about some of our priorities. How have we done on those priorities? The private sector working group is a major achievement of ours because we're trying to have one voice to drive some of the issues that are facing the private sector. So we actually have sub-working groups apart from the main working group, and we actually had an e-mobility working group meeting recently, and it has Oando Clean Energy in there, possible EVs, different people articulating some of the challenges that they have, and in that way we'll be able to get policy changes and policy response from the government when it's channeled from one area like the working group. So in terms of our priorities, we have done a few things, but there's obviously always room for improvement, and through fora like this, we're also able to get a bit more information and direction that we can go through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from one of our online participants, and it says, "Can you talk more on ACMI? I think it would be great for everyone to know. It is a great way to raise the finance needed. And then within the ETP, I think you partly addressed this. Is there a plan to navigate through the fuel subsidy removal, maybe as redirection towards solar subsidies?"
Okay, thank you. So the ACME, as it's called, is the African Carbon Market Initiative, and like rightly pointed out, is an innovative way of raising financing. So the ACME is really around trying to develop a voluntary carbon market within Africa, because right now, in terms of pricing, in terms of availability of these carbon credits, it's not really available, and there's no compliance market. Whereas in Europe, there are actually standards and compliance standards. So the ACME is really around trying to develop a voluntary carbon market across Africa. In terms of the fuel subsidy, again, not enough time has passed for us to determine what the actual impact either way is, but it's something that needs to be kept in view in terms of the strategy that is employed. to make sure that we're still on our decarbonization journey. So that's the additional input.
Thank you. So I just want to say, I know, so I'll just take one more from you, and then that will be it. I'm sure you can just meet him afterwards to ask more questions, but I'll take your question and then we'll call it.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my question is towards the power sector. So we've gone through the Electricity Act that gives states now the permission to generate, transmit, and distribute electricity, and we just concluded the NESG summit that brought private sector and government officials to kind of have some kind of synergy as to, and I'm so glad that the energy transition plan is quite in conformity with what the private sector and the government officials are saying. But I want you to talk more a little bit about specific policies that have to do with issues of energy mix and in terms of distribution, the metering. So are there any specific policy push that you're doing for energy mix? That's in terms of generation, and in terms of distribution, what are the specific policy push that you're advocating for in terms of metering and energy theft? And for transmission, what are the opportunities for the private sector? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that the Electricity Act is definitely a law in the right direction, and that actually has led to some of our engagements with subnationals in Lagos, in Ogun, and in Enugu State. So if you're thinking about the power value chain now, for instance, which is what you're mentioning, there's generation, there's distribution, transmission. One of the issues that is being had in terms of from the DISCO side is that they're doing a lot of cost estimated billing, and one way of eliminating that and introducing liquidity into the system is through metering. There was a national mass metering program. I believe phase 0 was 1 million meters, and there were plans to get up to 4 million meters. That's part of the work that we're doing. We're trying to not only get those meters out to households, but we're trying to ensure that there's local content there. There were plans to import some of those meters, 3-phase, 1-phase meters, but we're pushing towards, because we have some of these local manufacturers and local assembly makers of meters, and I think, for me personally, not speaking on behalf of the Energy Transition Office, I think that getting as many households to be metered as possible is one of the main solutions for the power sector. In terms of some of the other policies, we're trying to get solar onto the grid. So a lot of the solar solutions we have right now are usually off-grid, solar home systems, mini grids and whatnot, but there are independent power producers that are trying to get solar onto the grid. There were 14 solar IPPs that the government was trying to push some time. So we're trying to ensure that they have a smooth incorporation into the grid. So some of that is what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Somkhele. I know I put you on the spot, but I think it's nice that we got some of these questions answered. And can I just say that, like, you can just meet him. I've taken I've taken the power from you. So maybe during the tea break, you can meet him and ask him further questions. Thank you very much. I really learned more about the energy transition plan, I must say. Next up will be the panel discussion, but before that, I think we have the results of the Mentimeter. Do you have that so you can project so we can take a look? Okay, before it comes up, I think I have it on here, so I could just read out a few that stuck out to me. And we have clean and green landscapes, energy access, electricity, jobs. Jobs is a huge one, actually. I think that takes the top spot. Rural electrification, green economy, and then there was one about like a quiet environment. I'm guessing that's like without generators disturbing us at night. But yeah, I think we can all take a look since we logged on online, and then we can take a look later. Oh, so now it's up. Yeah, we got quite a number of responses, but like as you can see, like jobs takes the top spot, and then rural electrification. And I think the jobs part really speaks to what we're talking about today, as we're really looking at how the youth can get involved in the process. And in getting involved, it will help also create jobs within the sector. So now we'll go on to the panel discussion. And moderating that session will be Nina Boats Timothy. Nina is a lawyer specialized in renewable energy technology and policy. She currently works with Student Energy's Careers Training Program as a project coordinator, managing the Practicum projects portfolio of the program. She's very passionate about empowering young people with the skills and knowledge needed to enable them make inputs in the energy transition. She enjoys building systems that last and nurturing relationships, partnerships with like-minded people who use their skill set to build projects, organizations, and people. Before joining Student Energy, she worked with renewable energy companies as a policy and compliance professional, managing regulatory compliance, business practices, and executing contractual obligations. When she's not working, she loves to travel, listen to music, and enjoy each day to the fullest. So I'd like to call on Nina to come take over with the session.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you all here. I believe that this is a really important discussion for all of us. The interconnection between youth and existing industries and government bodies to come and discuss on Nigeria's energy transition plan, because I believe each and every one of us has important inputs to be recognized in this plan. All right, it's a great honor to moderate this panel and to also, thank you very much, they're setting up. So I would also like to welcome our panelists. We have a very distinguished line of panelists coming up here, and I would like you to give a round of applause as I welcome each and every one of them up on the stage. Our first panelist would be Mr. Somkele Awa Kalu. Please give a round of applause as he comes up the stage. Our second panelist is going to be joining us online, and her name is Owosa Irahon. Please give a round of applause. Thank you. The third panelist is going to be Gina Larunes, the head of the German-Nigerian Hydrogen Office from the GIZ. Round of applause, please. And our final panelist would be Dr. Toby Oluwatola, Executive Director, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. Thank you very much, and good morning to our panelists. I will just be reading the brief bios of each of our panelists so you understand the caliber of people we have on here who are able to answer some very interesting questions that I think will come up as we talk about the energy transition plan's implementation in this country. You've already met Somkele Awakalu. He's a financial specialist in the Energy Transition Office in Nigeria, and he supports the provision of financial expertise, analysis, and planning within Nigeria's Energy Transition Office to inform the development, delivery, and interventions and programs that can facilitate the flow of finance to unlock the energy transition developments. He's also focused on identifying finance needs for major operations leading to Nigeria's energy transition. And currently, he is leading the JETP workstream to articulate the case for Nigeria to access the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Please, a round of applause for our panelists. Our second panelist who will be joining us online is Owosa Arahon. Owosa is a lawyer with experience working in the public and private sectors, supporting energy and climate strategy development through risk policy, communications, knowledge, and program management. She has worked with donor-funded organizations and academia, and is also a co-author on the Touching Hydrogen Futures book and several publications. She's a TEDx speaker on carbon neutrality and has been recognized as an emerging energy and climate thought leader. Owosa has held roles in electricity markets, climate resilience, and most recently as advisor in the Global Hydrogen Diplomacy Program. She has a master's in oil and gas, mining law focused on trade, energy diplomacy, and pathways for low energy carbon economy. A round of applause, please. Our next panelist is Gina Lagunes, the head of the German-Nigerian Hydrogen Office. Gina is the head of the German-Nigerian Hydrogen Office at GIZ. With a background in energy engineering, she has dedicated her career to international cooperation in the area of renewable energies, energy efficiency, energy services, and climate change. From technical advisory for investment projects to policy advice, she has supported many cities and countries across the globe to increase the sustainability of their energy systems. A round of applause, please. And our final panelist for today is Dr. Toby Oluwatola, who is the Executive Director for the Center for Journalism, Innovation, and Development. He has almost 2 decades of experience working in the intersection of policy, management consulting, and technology in more than a dozen countries. He is also the founder of Tao Energy and Madiba Foundation for Good Governance. His mission is to help create a just and productive Africa. A round of applause, please, for all our panelists. Thank you. Good morning, our distinguished panelists. Our first question today on this energy transition dialogue is going to be addressed to Mr. Somkeli. The ETP has many lofty goals, and one of which is to manage the expected long-term losses of jobs in the oil sector due to the global reduction in fossil fuel demand. So with Nigeria's workshop being significantly youth-based, could you share with us some ways in which the plan specifically addresses this problem?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I think that the plan is clear on how declining oil demand will have an impact on the oil and gas sector, and thus also have an impact on jobs. But I think in terms of mobility, the oil and gas sector workers can be repurposed to renewable energy. So for instance, if you're a professional in the oil and gas sector, there's nothing that stops you from channeling your expertise into renewable energy manufacturing around solar PV. So the plan itself doesn't clearly say what the opportunities are for jobs, but it does prepare us for that eventuality where because of the decline in oil and gas demand, that we will have to think about what we do to repurpose those jobs that are lost. Because we're a youth-led population, I think it's easy for us to grasp the basics when it comes to moving from one career to another. You have a lot of content creators now. You have a lot of tech bros and tech sissies. So in terms of the pathway to jobs, I think that's not really a major concern, because as we continue to uptake renewable energy, there will be employment opportunities that come as a result of that. And if the oil and gas demand doesn't fall as much, then no, it's okay now. Yeah, so it is the energy transition plan is a live document, and will be taking
so we'll leave Owosa for now. Oh, hi, Owosa. It's good to have you on here.
Great. Hi, Nina. Yeah, the sound went on for a bit.
Okay, so we're having some
I-
technical issues and we can't really hear you for now. So while the technical team works on this, we're going to move on to the next question. Okay, so the question is for Gina. So you have done a lot of work in bringing awareness to the numerous possibilities of introducing hydrogen into the energy mix. So what is the relevance of hydrogen in the transition process, and how can young people position themselves to have careers in this space?
Thank you, Nina. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. We are very happy about the collaboration with SustyVibes to have this event today. which we think is so important for young people to get involved in this discussion surrounding the Nigerian energy transition. Because in the end it's going to, well, Nigeria is such a young country that the voices of young people are extremely important. Yes, as a German-Nigerian Hydrogen Office, a part of our mandate is to raise awareness about the opportunities that lay in this nascent hydrogen economy. So in terms of energy transition, low-carbon hydrogen is going to be very important to decarbonize the sectors that cannot be easily decarbonized in other ways, like let's say the more traditional ways of energy, using energy efficiency, renewable energies, electrification, and so on. So these are what is called hard-to-abate sectors. So first of all, we focus on industry, so replacing gray hydrogen as a feedstock in industry, because that's what's currently being used. Up to 100 million tons of hydrogen per year are being used in the industry, especially fertilizer and chemical and refineries. And so we first aim to replace that by green hydrogen, and then use green hydrogen as an energy carrier. But I want to make it very clear that it's not like we are going to be using green hydrogen for anything at home and so on. It's we are only to use green hydrogen where we cannot deploy other measures, because using hydrogen is more expensive, more you have more conversion, more inefficiencies than using electricity directly, for example. And you need electricity to produce hydrogen, so hydrogen is not an energy source, it's an energy carrier. So it's not a source of power, it's not like natural gas. Of course, there is also what is called natural hydrogen that is extracted from the ground as a fossil source, let's say, but it's different because it's being generated continually, and there are examples of this in Mali, in France, and there's a new industry that is looking for this natural hydrogen. And there we can say it's an energy source, but in general, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen are not energy sources, are energy carriers. And that's a very important distinction, because there's this misconception that we will produce power from hydrogen. We can store power in hydrogen and then then get the power again afterwards. So we can use hydrogen as a power storage, but it's not like natural gas that we will produce power from it. So in terms of the opportunities for young people and how they can already start positioning themselves to participate in this industry, of course, hydrogen is an industrial product, and as such, there will be a whole infrastructure surrounding it, industry, so we will need, of course, engineers. But the main input to produce hydrogen is renewable energy, so that's the main thing. We will need to scale up renewables just to produce the green hydrogen that the world will need. We will need the same amount of electricity that the world produces today, but all of it as renewable electricity. So we will need a lot of people working on renewables, and not only solar and wind. We will also need to focus on geothermal, for instance, because it's a great renewable source that is not being exploited as it should. I know that Nigeria has really good geothermal potential that has not been exploited, so we should focus also on geothermal, small hydropower. We need to really assess all the possibilities and not have this tunnel view. And so, of course, the main thing will continue to be renewables, and then Of course, for hydrogen, we will need policy analysts, market analysts. So it will be a whole industry, and we will need a lot of labor for that. So what I would recommend anyone who's interested in this topic, just to pursue all the trainings, the events. For instance, the Hydrogen Office is offering many different awareness raising and training activities. So you can follow us on our social media. And also you can, there are many other institutions that provide training in terms of hydrogen. There's this one called Mission Hydrogen, that they are offering really good webinars almost every week, and but you will find. So it's I think it's a matter of just starting to get into the topic, and then you will see all the opportunities that are popping up. It's a lot. It's a huge. There's a really huge interest in hydrogen in many countries, also in Nigeria, from both the private and the public sector. So we are working on preparing an enabling framework for that, and we're working also, as Duke Benjamin mentioned in his keynote, we're working with the universities also to develop curricula, and because we know that it will be very important in the future to have people that are trained in this, that are knowledgeable of the topic, and that can develop the projects that are needed to supply all this all the hydrogen that will be necessary just to fulfill the targets of the energy transition plan, but also go beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that succinct answer. So what we're expecting is that, as Mr. Somkele said, as the energy transition comes up, we're going to see a transition in jobs as well. And because hydrogen is not an energy source in itself, it's an energy carrier, we're going to also see renewable jobs also increase. So young people should, position themselves to hold those kind of roles in renewable energy jobs. Got it. Thank you so much. To our next panelist, Dr. Toby Oluwatola, our question for you is, you work primarily in the convergence of media journalism within the energy sector. And recently we have witnessed how the media has been a really powerful instrument in driving social change, particularly amongst young people. So in light of this, what strategies can the media employ to enhance the awareness of the energy transition plan, change, the negative narrative surrounding, the energy transition, loss of jobs and all that, and stimulate youth engagement in the energy transition?
Thanks, Nina, and thanks for the opportunity, SustyVibes. Before I address the question directly, let me speak to the question of jobs and when we talk about an energy transition or a just energy transition, what that should mean for us. And I'll start with an anecdote. Recently, Tesla was in Nigeria. They wanted to mine some lithium, but then the Ministry of Mines said, oh no, don't mine, we won't let you mine the lithium unless you set up a gigafactory here. And they said thanks, but no thanks. And nothing has come out of that conversation. But we know that there are lots of illegal mines, mostly operated by Chinese miners, that are, taking out our lithium in the millions of billions of tons on a daily basis. So we know that. It brings a few questions to mind. Now, why would Tesla not want to put a plant here? There are a few problems. One is that there are no ancillary services. So to take lithium and take it into lithium phosphate or whatever type of battery you're making, lithium manganese oxide, whatever, you need all these other things to come together, all these other things that need to be supplied. In Nigeria, we have a complete lack of enterprise manufacturing. So you have to import everything that you will use to process that lithium, and then you don't have power. So you have to have power, and then you don't have a market. So you have to somehow find someone to sell that. You have to somehow export majority of those cars to sell, so to get to the market. So before you know what, your cost of production, whereas your Model E cost you somewhere in the neighborhood, the battery itself costs you somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to make, if you're making it in Texas or you're making it in China. To make it in Nigeria could cost you as high as $20,000. So it makes your car uncompetitive. So that's where you start from, right? So, and you ask a question, we're going to be losing jobs in oil and gas. Do you see those people leaving those high-paying jobs, high-skill, high-paying jobs, to go be installing panels on my roof? I don't see it happening. So you've got to somehow not just create jobs, you've got to create high-skilled jobs. So the way to create high-skilled jobs is to really do high-value add. And one of the things that we still need, the energy transition plan is work in progress. What it still needs is an integration with a broader industrialization strategy, a broader strategy to say, what is the enterprise value chain of an electric vehicle? What parts of this enterprise, of this value chain, is Nigeria best suited to play? I wrote my PhD thesis on manufacturing, solar manufacturing in India, and the advice to them was that don't bother assembling panels because it's not worth your time. And you are not competitive to do that. There are other things that you are better at doing, like inverters, batteries, and stuff like that. And those are the areas where India thrives. So we've got to really think deeply about these things and map out a strategy that works for us, given our situation. But whatever that strategy is, we're still going to run into a problem of, because of where we're starting from, of the products that are being made here being uncompetitive. And this is where the carbon tax, where energy, a just transition comes in. This is where international subsidies, cross subsidies have to come in. There's no way we're going to be able to leapfrog and do all those things without a very clear conversation around the carbon finance, not just being debt and equity, but also a substantial part that is grants and performance-based grants of some sort. So that's the first point. Now to your question around what's the role of the media. So the role of the ontology of media in democracy really revolves around three things. So the first one is educating the people and setting the agenda for what we're trying to do, setting the agenda for democracy and for how we organize ourselves as a people. Where the energy transition is concerned, I think there are several areas where the public really need education. And I'll just take two examples or three examples. One is we've got about 86% of our people using very unhealthy, very expensive, and quite labor-intensive ways of cooking. And there are cleaner alternatives that are healthier and that shouldn't be too expensive. The energy transition plan says we want to get about 20 million clean cook stoves to those people. These people need to know that these things exist, and they need to know where the opportunities are to get it for cheap and to get a subsidized version of it and how to get their fuels and all that stuff. So there needs to be a lot of a mass public education, and the media plays an important role there. If we're not partnering sufficiently with the media, I really genuinely think that we're not partnering sufficiently with the media to get the word out. The second thing is there is a big misconception around the cost of renewables. And quite frankly, renewables do have a high upfront cost. But as I speak to you today, solar plus storage plus at least 4 hours of storage is cheaper than any other source of electricity. So the fact that people don't know or are not able to access that is a problem. The fact that people still think that solar and renewables are expensive relative to running your generator or going without light is a problem, and it's a public education challenge. Then I'll leave the setting the agenda challenge because I've spent too much time on that. Then there is the gatekeeper task of media. So who's a gatekeeper? A gatekeeper is someone who basically tries to control and make sure that the information that people get in the public sphere is correct and accurate. And if the media itself is ill-informed, then the information that gets out there isn't always going to be accurate, which is why the media need a lot of education, and we need to be able to find ways to cross-check. What does the energy transition plan say about XYZ? What's the new electricity act? What does it actually say about XY? The media really needs to be a gatekeeper of the public sphere. And the last and the most important part is the watchdog. And that's very critical, especially as we advocate for a lot of financing around the just energy transition. And a lot of this financing, or at least some of this financing, will be coming in the form of loans. Some of it has come in the form of loans to Nigeria and grants to third parties. There needs to be accountability. Because it's one thing to say we need money, but the little that we do have, how accountable are we with the money that we do have? We've spent $550 million on Nigeria electrification plan. It's not very clear if the results have been commensurate to the cost. So these types of things are some of the things that the media ought to do effectively.
Thank you so much for that very detailed answer. So what I understood from that is that, first of all, we need to talk about our local markets, especially when we talk about renewable energy technologies and manufacturing those technologies to reduce the costs that they have, the upfront costs that they have for installations. And then, of course, the media also has a role to ensure that whatever plans that the government has stated is in place for the adoption of renewables should also be, commensurate to what the results are in place, and also the watchdog, the awareness,
awareness, gatekeeper, and whatnot.
Yes, so thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on to our next panelist, Owosa. Let me know if Owosa is able to speak now, and we can hear her. Hi, Owosa, can you hear us?
Hi, Nina, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Good morning, it's great to have you on here. Yes, so our question for you is that considering the removal of subsidies on liquefied motor spirits, aka petrol, and the dramatic hike in cost of oil and gas produced in Nigeria, how do you think the government can cushion the effects of this policy change for young people and marginalized groups in the country?
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you, my friends at SustyVibes, as well as thank you to the rest of my panel and the other distinguished guests from the German-Nigerian Hydrogen Office, as well as the German Foreign Affairs as well. Very interesting panel so far. I'm really pleased that this conversation is happening, especially when it's targeted to young people. I'll maybe just start with what's clear. The cost of fuel or PMS in Nigeria obviously has exceedingly increased over the last 7 months. But mind you, this conversation for subsidy, for removal subsidy, has been going on since 2021. Actually, I had to find a report that I contributed to in 2021, which was speaking about how Nigerians are going to deal with the removal of subsidies. I can share that in the link notes as well. So this conversation has been happening for a while. So when the removal did go off, I believe just when this new president came in seat, it wasn't a surprise to anyone. But what the real surprise was there wasn't a cushion, like you've mentioned, to help the majority of people which are suffering or which are going through extra measures because of the reduction in, or rather the increase in the price of petrol, for example, or diesel. And I think that gap that the government exposed the country to is really having a ripple effect. So not to dwell on the gloom of what's happening, it's really good to emphasize on what a transition could be like. In 2020, the federal government under the Buhari administration introduced the decade of gas, which Nigeria then, stood up on the platform, really the conversation that gas is going to be used as a transitional fuel in order to reduce or elevate poverty or increase the amount of utilization. So there are programs like the domestic gas utilization program, which is essentially part of the energy transition plan, but I don't know why there's a little miscommunication in that field of it. But essentially what it is that we're going to get to a point where, because of gas is going to be utilized a lot more, it's going to mean that we are reducing the pressure that comes to the increase in other fuel sources. While gas is not, there's some videos that I've seen, of people using CNG for their automobiles, which is quite exciting and almost innovative. There are some security challenges to that read. Another angle of reusing the question when it comes to transportation is for cities like Lagos, which has been identified as one of the most densely populated cities in the whole world. So Nigeria is home to one of the most densely populated cities in the whole world. Integrated or mass transport systems is so necessary to ensure efficiency. That has its add-on effect. I think Gina mentioned this. The basically using the emphasis on just thinking about one side of the carbon neutrality focus. So there's this carbon tunnel that we should try avoid mitigating. And what that means is when we have more low carbon transportation, we're able to. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So when we have more low carbon sources of energy, we're able to obviously focus on other parts. So biodiversity, air pollution, which is a massive crisis now for even in cities like Abuja, where you think there are less cars, but obviously the more cars we have on the road, the more air pollution crisis that we experience. Lagos also introduced the, I think it's the first electric train. There was a few videos about that over the last few weeks. So seeing more initiatives like that, and I think one of the other panelists spoke about the BRI, which is the Belt Road Initiative, which actually kicked off in 2017 under that presidency. But obviously, that conversation is increasing now because we're seeing the emphasis on increasing and supporting young people, low-income families, and to increase their transportation possibilities. There's a lot the government can do. Even the energy transition plan itself has a specific segment that looks at gas utilization, low carbon solutions like electric cars, electric vehicles. So the energy transition has paid a very good attention to that, and I think there's about a 50 billion budget for that bucket for transportation alone. There are conversations being had. I think the person from the ETP office actually laid plans today that there are money, financing that's being made available. Now the issue is we've seen the gap in the market. How can we then make sure people are educated about it, know the options, and how do the government or private sector, in fact, take the leap forward to making sure that young people are not only beneficiaries of these schemes, or marginalized young people as well, are not only beneficiaries of these schemes, but they are aware that these kind of schemes happen. In some other African countries, like in Ghana and Kenya that I've experienced, they actually have young travel cards, which essentially encourage more young people to use public mass transportation. And what that means is, I don't know, you and I, Nina, could, have our under 40s card. And what that would mean is whenever we get onto a bus, we can show that we have a card and we're a particular age. That means we can have easier transportation rates and able to go into mass transportation as to the services. So there are a lot of initiatives that the government can learn from other countries, but the main priority is making sure that the energy transition plan is not disconnected from other initiatives that are happening. So one thing that I've actually noticed in Nigeria as well is initiatives tend to work in silos, and for successful net zero targets, which the government plans to meet by 2060, there needs to be more emphasis on putting youth inclusion at the middle of things, and also increasing participation around different initiatives as well as funding. So I hope that's a good conversation and to help people understand the potentials that government could put into place to cushion the pressure on increasing fuel prices. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Osa. I listened to your as I was listening to your speech, your response rather, I remembered that there's the BRT, the mass transit buses in Lagos that are actually in, functional right now, and you have to use a bus card to get on. But unfortunately, they're overpopulated because it's obviously a cheaper means of transportation. And a lot of people in Lagos actually don't even use their vehicles to work or for other transport. They just, get on those buses and go. So it's interesting. I'm seeing a lot of correlation between what you mentioned and what Dr. Toby talked about, partnering with the media, because there are, in fact, some initiatives that have, been brought up by the government, but there's very little awareness. And you also mentioned the fact of the people repurposing the petrol vehicles to be used as gas vehicles as well, which is quite interesting. Thank you so much for that. So our last question, and this is for everyone on the panel. What would you envision as a just and equitable transition for Nigeria? And Owose, since you were the last to speak, I would say you should just go ahead and give us your answer for this.
I'm sorry, Nina, could you please repeat the question? I think I just got the tail end of it.
Okay. So the question is, how would you envision a just and equitable energy transition for Nigeria? Did you catch the question? Oh, the internet is
I can't seem to hear you, so maybe I'll just... Sorry?
Oh. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next panelist, and then we'll get back to you, and hopefully the internet works at that point. Okay, so Gina, you're holding the mic. How would you envision a just and equitable energy transition for Nigeria?
Well, I think one thing that I would really like to see are cities that are built for people and not for cars. That is something very striking when you come to Nigeria, that cities are just thought for cars. They're not thought for pedestrians, let alone cyclists. So you absolutely need a car to go from A to B, and I think that's very unsustainable and not equitable at all, because that really disproportionately affects vulnerable populations and marginalized communities. So I would really like to see that. I would really like to see jobs that are good jobs in the renewable energy sector, and of course I would like to see a lot of capacity building training for the people to be able to take on these jobs, and of course renewable energies should be providing these jobs and prosperity. And I would love to see a transition that is based on bringing prosperity to the people instead of just raising prices that are already pretty high and pretty difficult the situation is, the cost of living is pretty high already in comparison to what people make. So I would like to see a transition that brings prosperity to the people, and that is really sustainable in social terms, not only environmental. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Toby, please.
Thank you for the question. And thanks to Gina, I thought that was a very thoughtful point around cities being built for people. Just to add to what Gina said, I think I will focus on 5 things. So one is that the path to developing new energy sources and the path to the new energy systems must be inclusive. When in the first iteration, when the extraction of oil and gas, what it has left for many of the host communities is just degradation and sickness. So as we mine green minerals, whether they be lithium, cobalt, manganese, rare earth metals, these processes have to be inclusive. And that really, and it has to leave value for the people that in the host community. So that's the first point, and it really dovetails to the second point, which also says that we've also got to play a stronger role, as opposed to a stronger technical role in the development of these new technologies. So which means that there's got to be lots of manufacturing, value-added services happening locally. So that's the second point. The third point is that we cannot say that we are transitioning without paying the full costs of the past. In economics, we have something we call externalities. When you do a transaction, you do your transaction, but then if your transaction is affecting a third party, that cost of that third party being affected is part of your costs that you should factor into, take out and pay for before you recognize your profit. And that's why there's a need for social planners to sort of tax transactions that have, third party effects on people. And this is where, when we say the invisible land, it's not always invisible, because there's always information asymmetries in markets, and there's always externalities. And part of the externalities of the way we have developed so far is climate change, is the environmental damages that have been done to a lot of communities. Those costs have to be paid before we can say we are transitioning. And it's not about debts and equity, it's about paying the cost, But the truth is that nobody goes to the court of justice and is happy to go out. It comes with pain, and that needs to happen. Those conversations need to happen very frankly. The third is that there needs to be energy. We have to end energy poverty, make sure people have electricity, and all those types of things. And then we have to replace the jobs that were lost, create new jobs, and things like that. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think they've said most of it, but I think that a just and equitable transition in the Nigeria context has to take into consideration the Nigeria context. It's not, we shouldn't look at what another country is doing and then just copy and paste it here. We have to understand what the selective nuances in Nigeria are. So for instance, if you're thinking about clean cooking technologies, there are some stoves, improved cook stoves that work in Kenya because of maybe the kind of food that they cook there. But if we're adopting those technologies in Nigeria, we have to think about, for instance, the number of people in a household. So for instance, in the north, where one person cooks for 10 people, so a just and equitable transition has to be nuanced with Nigeria. I think we also have to ensure that it is a transition and not, I mean, in some areas you have to leapfrog, but you actually have to transition, which is why it is necessary to determine what the role of gas is in this energy transition. Because at the end of the day, we're contributing very little to global emissions, but we're disproportionately affected. Farmer health crisis, different issues that are arising from climate change action. So I think that it's very important. Dr. Toby spoke about the media having an equitable transition means giving a voice to those host communities he spoke about, giving a voice to the young people, and giving a voice to the marginalized to be part of that as we craft that strategy. It's not enough for McKinsey or some fancy consultant in Abuja to come up with a pathway. We need to ensure that everybody contributes towards that Nigeria energy transition.
Thank you so much. Owosa, can you hear us now?
I can.
Did you catch the question, or should I repeat it?
Yes, so how do I envision a just transition in Nigeria?
Please go ahead.
That was a question. Awesome. I think that the question the other panelists have, raised very valid answers. It's not a one-stop shop, unfortunately, and it's one that, as I've discussed with people in the chat here, doesn't happen in silos. Just focusing on my own question from, the panel questions on transportation, we understand the impact of movements of goods and movements of people. AFTA, which is this the African Trade Union Convention, emphasizes the importance of movements of people and goods. We've seen also movements of people and goods is being caused by flooding. So there's flooding happening in Lagos and other southern regions. We're seeing a lot of migration happening. So transportation in the grand scheme of things is really affecting Nigerian lives and the way people see energy use. How I envision that is when we are at a point where people can really just own where they live. I understand that, like, if I'm going to be working in Ikeja, I don't have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I'm trying to meet the particular working hours. But at the same time, there is empathy and safe. Feeling served in the country isn't safe for a lot of young or marginalized people. So that's another emphasis that we need to focus on. So again, the energy transition and the low carbon future doesn't just work in silos. We need to pay attention to things like, as someone has mentioned, energy poverty, but on the other hand, increasing safety and security, as well as understanding the climate risks that are posed to. Yeah, thank you, Nina.
Thank you so much, Owosa. I'm learning a lot from all that has been said on this panel. I think one thing that really sticks out is that, there are initiatives, and there are more initiatives coming up, but there's sort of a gap between the people the initiatives are made for and the people who are making the initiatives. So there needs to be, more conversations around what is ongoing, and to ensure that we're actually transitioning and not just making plans and trying to implement them even when we have not had that opportunity to have some important conversations. Okay, so I know that our panel has panelists have discussed a lot of important things, and you may have 1 or 2 questions. So I will open the floor to receive 2 questions at most. Please make sure that it's fastest fingers, so the first person I see is able to ask a question to the panel. Yes, young lady, thank you so much. Can we get her a mic?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Panelists, you did a great job. I'm really excited to be here. I have this quick question. What are the plans that the Energy Transition Office has for standardization in the renewable energy market? For instance, you have people who are interested in solar, they invest, but because the technician installed low standard PV solar systems for them, they end up developing a bad perception of renewable energy generally. So what is the Energy Transition Office doing in regards to standardization and ensuring that renewable energy that gets to the masses has a good standard? Otherwise, at the end of the day, people will not be interested, and if people are not interested, who are we doing what we're doing for?
Okay, I think that's an interesting question. I think standards is extremely important, but we need to look at it from the point of view of standards generally in Nigeria. I think SUN has a massive role to play in terms of standardizing renewable energy technologies in Nigeria. So we're trying to strengthen the capabilities of SUN. We're trying to push for policies that open or widen the policy areas for SUN. We're also looking at the possibility of having a renewable energy standards organization, but again, cost of governance, we have to be mindful of the times we're in. Also, but I think that goes beyond just renewable energy. I think in Nigeria in general, people don't like to conform to standards. They like to look for the shortest cut. So that will also impact the renewable energy space. But we're conversant and we're aware of that being an issue. So we're working closely with Standard Organization of Nigeria to ensure that issue is addressed.
I think there's also an education piece to it that hopefully we will start to see more of. Materials come in tiers. So the same way if you go buy a Technophone, you know it doesn't have the capability of, and I don't know, let me not say this, let me not sell iPhones, you know. But even with these technologies, there are iPhones of solar. So that's why we have tier 1 technologies, tier 2 technologies and things like that. So there's also an education piece that people need to be educated as to what they're buying.
Thank you so much. All right. Unfortunately, we have a question there.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon, panelists. My question goes straight to Dr. Toby about clean cook stoves. I've seen the clean cook stoves that use